Good afternoon to you all, or good morning, and welcome to this year's last edition of our Keys webinar series, The Year in Review, and what a year it has been. So during the next 45 minutes, we will reflect on it together. We will leverage, as usual, our data from around the world, but also our global experts and our local knowledge. To start with, in Lives Disrupted, Simon will update us about the current public mood, very different from what it was when the year started almost 12 months ago. Then Jim and Claudia will show us what our changing contexts mean for people's decision-making and what the implications are for businesses, for brands. And also, they will make us think about the need to review some of our fundamental research assumptions that we're using to make decisions. After that, we will turn to Spotlight on China. And Kelly, who is connecting from Shanghai, will bring us a fresh view on how the economy, brands, and consumers are responding to the events of the past year. And at last, we will have a glimmer of hope because Jackie, in Defining Moment, will take us through the fast story of the coronavirus vaccines, and she will also give us an idea of what we should expect next. So all, I'm sure, very keen to listen to these speakers, and with that, I will pass on to Simon. Simon, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Jennifer, and hello, everybody. It's great to be with you. As Jennifer says, what a year it's been. And in order to perhaps just set the scene for our presenters later, I've spent a little bit of time going back over the last year and trying to look at where public opinion was, where the emerging behaviours were at 4 moments in time. And to start with, I went back 1 year ago, or actually a little more than 1 year ago, to the 6th of December, when we completed fieldwork for our 2020 predictions survey around the world. In more than 30 countries, we were asking people to reflect on the year just gone and to think about what the current year, or the coming year, I should say, was going to bring. And it's a reminder that for many people, 2019 wasn't a fantastic year. Half of our respondents around the world were saying that 2019 was a bad year for me and my family. But never fear, 75% of us were optimistic that 2020 would be a better year for us than 2019. Of course, what we got was not, I think, what any of us were expecting. Indeed, just 58 days into the new year, we had this Economist headline talking about the coronavirus and talking about it going global. And just 3 weeks after that, we had the famous front cover here, where the world was closed. Now, we'd started to track emerging behaviours and people's prevailing mood by that time. And one of the things that was apparent was just how quickly it went straight to the top, if you like, of the leaderboard of priorities. Kelly's going to talk about China a little bit later. It was already there in the middle of March as a huge issue and a big topic and theme for our country to grapple with. And the same quite quickly in France, Germany, and Italy, for example. Very unusual, I think, for any of us who are researchers to see a figure move from 20% in France, as we have there, to 65% in just a matter of a small number of weeks. So we had the speed of its arrival. And with that came a question which we're going to look at later. Jim and Claudia are going to talk about changing contexts. And we had that quite quickly with one of the studies that we run every month called What Worries the World. We asked people in 28 countries to tell us from a list which 3 of the following topics they find are the most worrying in their country today. And it's a lovely data set. It goes back for 10 years. We have some great trend lines, but of course, there's something missing here. And so we had to break the trend line, if you like, and add coronavirus to the list of categories. It even broke the scale because it came in at 61%. and as the top issue in 24 of the 28 countries. And it was just an example of how we had to almost recalibrate some of our regular studies quite quickly. Now, the world may have been turned upside down, but many people were still expecting things to return to normal by June. So here's more March data. We had majorities in many countries still optimistic that things are going to return to normal by June, whatever the official trajectories or the official data may be showing. So that prevailing mood at that point was perhaps that it may not be a completely long-term development in our lives. If I move forward for just 3 months though to June, you'll notice that we had to develop a new question, one which was more looking at things returning to normal within a longer time phase, if you like. And so this chart shows you the view to normal continuing to retreat into the horizon. That's what we had in June, and even over the preceding 4 weeks or so, we had a real increase in the number of people saying more, 1 year or more. If we move still into June's results and think about what was happening at that time, we were starting to try to understand where people were in some kind of journey through the phases of the crisis. And we started to ask people in different countries around the world to self-assess where they were and where they were feeling, if you like, on the day when we were doing the field work. Now, we knew at the time that it was unlikely to be a completely linear process, but it was quite instructive to watch the progression, if you like, along the scale. And one of the things that was absolutely clear at that point was we were seeing more people in the right-hand side of the chart starting to think about restarting or even moving towards some kind of new normal situation. So that's where we were at that moment. If I move now to where we are now, as the year comes to a close, we're still asking that question around the phases of the crisis. But this time I have to direct your eyes to the left-hand side of the screen, because we're finding, if anything, we are no further on or even moving backwards if we look across 15 markets. Kelly will remind us of the different experiences of different countries when she gives us her China spotlight. But if we're looking at a basket of countries around the world, I think one of the key takeaways is this has perhaps taken a much longer time than anybody was expecting as the crisis hit us in the, let's say, the early weeks and months of the year. The What Worries the World study still has, by the way, coronavirus at number 1 on the list of worries around the world. And thinking about that theme of worry, of anxiety, and of concern, even if we start to look at the people who are perhaps at the right-hand side of the chart, they're thinking about restarting or moving towards something that has some resemblance of normality, there's still some anxiousness about resuming normal activities and worry about a further wave coming soon to their country. So certainly that sense of, let's say, worry about exactly what is going to happen next is quite pervasive. But we do now have this question, partly as we look towards the end of the year, to return to this "and now what" theme. We've looked at this a number of times this year, and to return to our Economist front covers, of course, the big story at the moment is the story of the arrival of the vaccines. Jackie will take us through that story a little bit later on, but clearly huge questions and hope around what it means for our lives, for the opening up of society, and also for the further opening up of economies. And just to give one example, if we look at restarting our travel activities, we're getting very stark findings when we ask people how they would feel about starting to make another leisure trip again if they had had a vaccine, and clearly huge opportunities for brands and for businesses as things start to move forward, we hope, as the vaccine takes shape. But I'll leave Jackie to pick up on that story, and really just to say, as we look back on this, I think perhaps the takeaways I got from preparing this presentation, yes, it was the unexpectedness, thinking about 1 year ago, the speed, and then the protracted nature of, let's say, the experience that people have had in countries all around the world. We're continuing to release the latest findings on a whole range of topics, so I leave you in the webinar pack with the links to the latest research. But for now, it's for my colleagues to take the story forward, and I'm going to hand back to Jennifer in Milan to do just that. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot, Simon. That was a very efficient whistle-stop tour of last year. Really, everything seemed so far away, but at the same time, still so present, right? And lots of moving pieces, definitely changing context, and we are very all keen, I'm sure, to hear what Jim and Claudia have to tell us about what this means for consumers, for businesses, and for decision makers. So, Jim, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Jennifer. Picking up where Simon left off, it doesn't matter so much that whether we're 6 months, 12 months, 2 years away from the new normal, or in fact, as it's now being coined, the no normal. The truth is, as humans, the context we live in is shaping the way we're having to make decisions in everyday life. Now, we've spoken before about how, as humans, we make decisions either in a more mindful or a more mindless way across a continuum. And what we're very much seeing now is the context of the pandemic is now shaping our lives. We're seeing that we socialize differently, we work together differently, we prioritize differently, we buy and we consume differently. So it really isn't any surprise that we're actually deciding differently. We have different priorities in our lives because of the effect of the pandemic in 2020. Now, what we're seeing from data points is that we're becoming more mindful on that mindless, mindful continuum, but we're also seeing conflicts, and it's the conflicts I just want to touch on just for a moment. All around us, we see media reports of the things that we shouldn't be doing, and there's an interesting behavioral trait that we all follow called willful blindness, and it was raised in a book by Margaret Heffernan, and effectively what it says is, we have inner beliefs and values, but sometimes we still make decisions that play against those beliefs and values. So we may believe that we shouldn't be adding to carbon emission, but it doesn't necessarily stop us flying around the world on holiday or on business. We know we shouldn't buy water in plastic bottles because it's bad for the environment and the oceans, but it doesn't necessarily stop us. So this got us thinking, has the pandemic brought a situation whereby as consumers, we are becoming less willing to accept fractures between what we value and believe and how we behave, how we purchase, and how we consume? So what we thought we'd do, we just started to get some tests in here, and I thought we'd look at this through the spectrum of another emergency we face. So it's not just a health emergency we have, we're also facing an environmental emergency. And we know within the environmental emergency, there's a huge ongoing consumer decision-making and prioritization tension. So again, if we return to the data, this data was collected about 6 weeks ago, so it's very recent. We know behind all the concerns of the pandemic and the health crisis, that there is also increased concern across these 7 leading nations in terms of the environmental disaster we're heading towards and the habits we need to change. So despite some popular myths, environmental causes is becoming more important during the pandemic, not less. So we then turn to our longitudinal ethnography panel to see how individuals around the world were actually behaving with respect to the context they now live in and this environmental tension. And it became really fascinating because you can start to see 2 sides of the same coin. The first quote, this person's going to stop using industrial wipes, they think it kills the planet, and they're going to switch to more natural products. But in the same context, someone with the same environmental concerns, they're taking the opposite route. They're more concerned about health. So despite the awful stuff, as they call it, and they know it's terrible for the environment, they still decide to use it because their priorities are shifting between the health concern and the environmental concern. So again, that got us thinking about the role that brands can play in this. And we have a belief that brands can actually play an important role going forward in helping us confront some of this willful blindness, helping lift some of these blinding veils to how we decide and what decisions we make and prioritize. So again, if we look at how brands can help, we'll turn back to the data to help support us. In the UK, again, just from data from 6 weeks ago, we've seen this huge shift from pre-pandemic to where we are now, of 1 in 2 people in the UK saying they want to buy brands that reflect their personal values. It's now up to nearly 3/4 in October this year. And it's a huge shift in such a small period of time. But here's the rub. For me to understand as a consumer whether a brand is reflecting my personal values, I need to understand the brand's personal values and beliefs. And this gets magnified further when we look at some global data points, which tell us that 7 in 10 people want businesses and bosses and brands to speak out on social and political issues. Where do you stand on Black Lives Matter, on gender equality, on LGBTQ+? Again, helping lift those blinding veils for consumers so we can make more informed decisions based on our values and beliefs. Frankly, it got to the point where we had to do some deeper research on this. So we handed over this thinking to some of our fabulous analysts at Ipsos. And I want to now hand over to Claudia to take you through some further research that we did that I think you'll find truly fascinating.
Thank you, Jim. Hello, everyone. So for the next couple of minutes, I'm just going to take you through some of the analysis that we did that provides what we think are, some strong data-driven evidence to shifting consumer priorities. So what we did was we looked across all the brand tracking studies that we do globally to identify the ones that had pre-COVID data and during COVID data so that we could compare the 2 time periods. And because this is tracking data, obviously what's important to do this sort of comparison is that we have consistent methodology and consistent sampling. Now, on this chart, what you see are drivers for 6 different categories across different countries. And our analysis focused on the changes, the shifts in the rank order of these attributes. So the green shifts are obviously the ones that have moved up in importance ranking, and the red ones are those that have shifted down. So what exactly is shifting? So the attributes that we've pulled out here are some of the ones that we felt were notable or meaningful shifts in ranking. So I'll take this one category at a time. So starting with the snacking category on the left. So you see things like feeling like a good mom or freshness have moved up in priority. In OTC, not surprisingly, given the current situation with the virus, consumers are looking for peace of mind. And they want to believe in a brand that will work for them. They want efficacy. And things like formats and flavors, those things have dropped down in terms of priority. In infant formula and hot beverages, things like natural ingredients, vitamins, minerals, these are things that have moved up the ranks. And moms are wanting to be reassured. They are wanting to feel that they can trust brands. Now, in the financial services, we see consumers seem to be placing more importance on things like integrity and principles, which would not be surprising, obviously, given the tough, moral, social, economic decisions that businesses and governments are having to make today. So we see integrity and principles really coming to the forefront. And what's really interesting in the last category for apparel is that we see that there are no notable shifts, which was really interesting, and it begs the question around, how suitable are the attributes in terms of their ability to capture some of the changes that we're seeing happening today. But overall, I think when we look at this analysis and we look at the things that have shifted up and down, we get a sense that consumers are getting more entrenched in their core values and in their core needs. Consumers are looking for different reassurances. they are becoming more mindful about their choices. And as Jim mentioned earlier on, they are deciding differently. So the question is, are we still making decisions based on pre-COVID data? You know, we do segmentations and UNAs. These things used to be valid for a few years. But I guess the question now is it time to refresh them? Is it time to ensure that they reflect the shift in consumer priorities? In our trackers, tracking statements that were crafted before COVID, you know, are they sensitive enough today to pick up on these changes that we're seeing in consumer mindset? And obviously, brand strategies are also being reevaluated. Brands are adjusting. So are our trackers evolving with the right attributes, with the right performance indicators to make sure that we're able to track the performance of brands in this changing world? And finally, what about communications? You know, are they still relevant? Are they hitting the right chord today? And very simply, just do we need to rethink about messaging?
Thank you, Claudia. And you know, that for me, that's absolutely fascinating insights into the changing context leading to changing priorities and the way consumers are prioritizing different decisions. And a lot of the work that Claudia just showed us, this is foundational data providing foundational insights, which drives a lot of our businesses forward. Now, we've spent the last few minutes hopefully bringing to light and hopefully sharing with you interesting information to show we have this shifting context because of the pandemic, and that is leading to these shifting priorities. So I'll take you back to the core question that Claudia asked. You know, is this the right time to revisit the data we're using to drive our businesses forward? Now, we've only had a short bit of time to talk to you today, but we are releasing a white paper tonight, which has a lot more detail into some of the detail behind this. So please, if you want a copy, please come to the website, please take the link, and hopefully you'll enjoy the paper and be in touch. Back to you, Jennifer.
Thank you, Jim. We'll definitely download the paper. It was absolutely fascinating, like you said. So thank you so much, Claudia, for taking us into the secrets of the numbers, and Jim for wrapping this up for us. Jim, one of the things that you mentioned that I found that resonated a lot was this idea of tension and how the tensions can lead to very different kinds of behaviors. And that made me think that, you know, one of the questions that we have a lot from our clients these days is what's going to stick? We know there's changes, but are the changes that we're seeing here to stay, or are they things that are going to, of course, we know you don't have a crystal ball and that often predictions are not right? But still wondering if you have some sort of ideas to share on that.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. Predictions are really tricky, Jennifer, but I can see it at two levels. I can see it at sort of macro level, where we're seeing some shifts like the move to online, like the move from cash to cards in societies, and even telemedicine, which has just exploded through the pandemic. But I think as a brand owner and as a business leader, the changes we're seeing are so specific, as the analysis that Claudia showed. There aren't really generalizations we can give. It depends on category, it depends on brand. So I think I would implore our clients to be looking more closely at the information they're using and making sure that the category they're in and the competitive set they've got, that data is in today's context, not in context pre-COVID.
Great, very good advice.
Indeed, and actually, just thinking about the analysis that we've been doing, Claudia, you've taken the plunge and taken a real dive into the data set and really looked at kind of the before and after, if you like. What's the finding that surprised you the most?
I think, yes, so we looked into lots of different tracking data, different data sets. I think anyone who's looked at different data from different sources, you know, there's always a question is, you know, are findings going to converge in some way, because you're looking at this across different categories, different countries. So I think what I took away, the thing that was a nice surprise was that, you know, the fact that there was coherence in what we saw. And it's also that it's because it's just so relevant to what I'm living through every day. So, you know, as a mom, I'm going to the stores, I'm buying things. I realize that my priorities are shifting as well. I know the people close to me, I know their priorities are shifting, but to see that then in a bigger way in data, I think that was the one thing that I definitely retained doing this analysis.
So you're almost able to do a personal validation of
Yeah.
the data set. That's fantastic. Thank you for that.
You're the living testimonial of the shifts that we've been talking about. Great. So thank you so much to both of you for sharing these insights. And now we're going to all travel to China. Of course, China is a country that has been very, very present all along this story of the pandemic. And Kelly has been with us a few months ago to tell us about what was going on in China. China is interesting because it's a bit ahead of us in terms of the timing, the phases. And so we're very keen to hear back from you, Kelly. Thank you for being with us again today to tell us about the wrapping up of the year and the perspectives in China today.
Hi, hello, Jennifer. Thank you very much for inviting me again. This is Kelly here. Now I'm going to let you know the situation right now for China. But before that, I would like everyone to know that what Chinese people have gone through for the entire year. Actually, when we look at the entire year of 2020, actually, we really went through a roller coaster experience, because from the first coronavirus cases were reported, and most people were shocked in disbelief. Is that serious? Is that a bad joke? Lots of people asked that. And then during the lockdown, everybody endured several months of anxiety and had to adjust many aspects of life until we got the significant improvement arrived. Then, however, the sad news of COVID, and it hit us. It hit Chinese young people as well. And they even cursed the year, of 2020 for being so tough to them. And they lost the beloved ones, kept leaving us. And then the trade war between US and China, and then the US election, which threw people into great wonder. Where are we going? And for the next 4 years, would that be a big trouble for China? These are all questions we ask all the way. We check with each other all the way. And well, finally, another big icon collapsed, Maradona. But this time, used to the hardship of 2020. I don't know how other people feel, but my husband cried in that evening. And I think people can only make a deep sigh, say, Diego, rest in peace. So this is how we feel in 2020. But what about today? What about the year end in 2020? So despite all of the ups and downs, Chinese still found silver linings. As a time-hardened nation, we think we always can. So look at this consumer confidence index on the right side. We felt that the confidence is back. And the figure in October, it looks higher even it was in January. And the social and economic orders are being restored because the GDP growth said that. Also, we have a unique confidence and a faith in the government and ourselves. We believe the situation can be in control. Believe it or not, several days ago, I flighted to Guangzhou, for my business trip. And I was informed that I couldn't come downstairs for breakfast because I need to go through the test first. And after that, I was given for a room service breakfast before I got a test. And I'm willing to do so actually, because I know that government asked for this because they want to make sure I'm being safe and other people, other travelers can be safe and everyone is safe, the safety situation. So this is because of the ongoing extensive testing and tracing system, everyone's safe. And the final number, you can see that because the online shopping is still as much vibrant as previous years. The Double 11 remained festive. So by the way, Double 11, we call it Double 11, but actually it is on the November 11th, which is the biggest shopping festival in China, just like Black Friday in US. Yeah. Okay. So if we all understand that the spending power is still there, but how has the spending changed? So Chinese peoples, they managed to maintain spending almost on par with previous years. Nevertheless, there are subtle changes still there. The picture is shifted. You can see the right side, travel and outgoing was stopped, yet people shifted passion to exploring other enjoyment in life. The unnecessary big ticket spending was put on hold, but instead, people start to invest more in future health. They also arose the desperate need to spend in things which can provide little joy, a small pleasure, or including consolation. So this is how we shifted the spending pattern. And then how is the business responding in China right now? Because business have been smart enough to adapt to new changes and new opportunities. And for the online sales, which is always records kept being renewed. And thanks to the live streaming, which is becoming the new window to attract a lot of the sales volumes. So if you can look at the pictures, there's a man called Austin. He's not a model. He's not a celebrity. He grew up a lot of professionally as a L'Oreal, a beauty consultant, but now he is the top KOL, key opinion leader in China right now. Believe it or not, if you look at the number, he personally attracted such a big number for Double 11 on that particular day. So we all view him as a volume window. It's amazing, right? And for the second one, it's about the online versus offline, because commodities have become much easier to get given the improved synergy between online and offline platforms. So today, you can almost buy whatever you want and wherever you are in China, even during the pandemic. And also recently, so many people are talking about the highly personalized product in the market. So products that convey a me first image are the big winners. We all call for the personalization and customization. Also, many brands, many retailers found a great opportunity in low-tier cities. When we listen to our clients, they all call this as go deep strategy or go rural area strategy. So as long as they can be flexible and creative enough, because the way of communication in those low-tier cities is certainly different as it is in high-tier cities. This is how we feel this business changing, Move to my last chart. Actually, I want to talk about hope. Basically, for Chinese people, we really want to have a whole new year. And we want to have 2020 to be closed in peace. In the new year of 2021, we hope that travel and mobility can come back. People need to go home and make new journeys abroad. On the other hand, we wish to further explore new ways of life, especially the online life, which received so many developments during the pandemic. Some people may also find home or office a worthy new trend. And we would also love to reach out to the idols we love and we reconnect with entertainment. There are lots of the fun out there. And meanwhile, very much important, we remain cool and sensible by looking forward to the vaccines. So these are the hot topics we can see from the social listening data. So this is the over the short summary for China. We believe that life would find its way, and tomorrow it's another day. Thank you, Jennifer.
Thank you, Kelly. Really, really great to have this this snapshot on China and to see how things are evolving, and again how some of these changes seem to be very, very relevant to consumers. So one of the things you mentioned, I am very curious about. So among the products that we saw were growing in terms of the spend in China, you mentioned consolation. And I was curious to hear what a consolation product is, and if you could maybe share an example with us.
Really good question. We call it as blind box economy. Just like several months ago, I made an order. Actually, I bought a blind box on a weekly basis. Let's say every week I can receive a blind box. There might be toys for my daughter, and there might be skincare products for myself. So it's more like every week I can receive surprises. So that's really, really interesting.
Yeah, that sounds very cool. So sort of a subscription to a weekly surprise. That's really nice. Great. Thank you so much for sharing that that experience with us. And you finished your presentation, Kelly, talking about vaccines, which leads us very nicely into the last bit of our presentation today with Jackie. Thank you very much, Jackie, for being with us, and we're keen to listen what you have to tell us about vaccines.
Great, thanks so much. Okay, so I'm Jackie Alakwa, and I run our global syndicated services at Ipsos Healthcare. And much as Simon said earlier, we've spent a good part of the last year really looking at the impact of COVID-19 on healthcare, and especially on the most vulnerable patients, cancer patients, patients with autoimmune diseases. But more recently, we've moved to looking at the impact of the COVID-19 vaccines, and that's what I'm going to talk to you about today. COVID-19's affected all countries, all industries, and all walks of life. 68 million confirmed cases globally to date, 547,000 newly reported cases in the last 24 hours. This virus really knows no bounds, not from a geography standpoint, not from a demographic standpoint. And I can speak to this myself because I'm just actually have recovered from COVID-19. And so because of the breadth and the depth of this virus, which is overtaking the world, all hopes are pinned on a vaccine. This is the most anticipated vaccine in modern history. And frankly, having worked in healthcare for the last 30 years, I've not seen anything like this. There's 273 COVID-19 vaccine candidates in development. 58 of those are in clinical testing, 11 in phase 3, which is the latest phase of clinical trial development, and one has already been licensed. And I'm sure if you've been listening to the news or reading, you've heard all about the Pfizer-BioNTech vaccine, Moderna vaccine, AstraZeneca, J&J. So many other vaccines are coming down the pike. But when we think about the COVID-19 vaccine development process, it's really far from typical. In the pharmaceutical industry, it typically takes 10 years to discover, to build, to test, and to launch a vaccine. And when we look at what's happened with COVID-19, that time period has been condensed to a year. So in our recent COVID-19 impact study, we asked healthcare professionals in 10 markets when they expect a vaccine to be available. And what we saw, and what turned out to be accurate, was that physicians in the UK expected to see the vaccine sooner than physicians in Germany. So the UK physicians thought it would be coming soon, within the next 2 to 3 months, followed by US physicians, and we're seeing that as we've just seen the first patients being vaccinated in the UK just this past week. We also asked the doctors, using a scale of 1 to 7, how comfortable they are with the accelerated development. The fact that this vaccine has been developed in 1 year compared to typically what takes 10 years. And what we see is that the German doctors are more comfortable than the US physicians, and frankly, the UK physicians are less comfortable out of all of the groups. But we do see differences in every country, and a lot of that has to do with the differences within the country themselves as to when the vaccines are going to be available, what the government policy is going to be on vaccines. So clinical outcomes and approvals are not the only barriers to vaccinating the world. So if you think about vaccinating the world, and you think about the fact that the Pfizer vaccine, the Moderna vaccine, the AstraZeneca vaccine all require 2 doses. Consumers need to get vaccinated, come back within 28 days to get their second vaccination. Think about the billions of doses required to vaccinate the world. So just think about that manufacturing capacity and how that's going to get done. And then I already talked about the Pfizer and BioNTech vaccine. Not only does it need 2 doses, but it needs to be stored at a temperature of minus 70 to 80 degrees. And so it requires some really strong refrigeration and freezing capacity. The Moderna one as well, but not to the same extent. So that also leads to administration. So where will these vaccines be administered? What types of centers will have the right capacity and have the right size and be conveniently located where they can actually vaccinate the consumers? And lastly, compliance. I talked about 2-shot vaccines. If consumers do not go back and get their second vaccine, their booster vaccine, they will not be immune from the virus. So we really need to think about all of those things when we're thinking about the barriers to vaccinating the world. And when we talk to a couple of our physicians, general practitioners in the UK, they fed back those same concerns and those same issues with what it's going to take to get vaccination up to speed. So we asked in our essential study among 18,000 adults in 15 countries, if the vaccine was available, would they take it? And we saw that nearly 3 out of 4 consumers would take the vaccine if it was available. But that was a 4% drop in strong agreement since September. Now, it'll be interesting to see now that a vaccine is actually available, what will happen with this number. But it's not just about that. It's about contending with the anti-vax groups and the vaccine hesitant individuals, and governments in trying to get people vaccinated are going to have to understand how to work with this group. If you think about anti-vaxxers, they're very strong on social media. And vaccine hesitant population, there's people that are hesitant for a variety of reasons. When we looked at some of our behavioral science feedback on a study that we did with vaccine hesitant people, we found that the reasons for the hesitation are diverse. Some of it could have to do with their tolerance of risk. Some of it could have to do with societal issues. Some of it could have to do with religious issues. So it's a complex issue, but it needs to be dealt with in order to get the vaccines to the masses. The other issue that we need to take into account is trust. So if we look at the Ipsos Global Trustworthiness Index, we can see that luckily, scientists and doctors are the most trusted professions. But on the flip side of that, governments and politicians are the least trusted. And of course, the governments and the politicians are setting the policies right now in most countries on who is going to get vaccinated and how. But luckily, the scientists and the doctors are the ones recommending the people for the vaccine. So there's only one certainty, I think, when it comes to COVID-19 and particularly COVID-19 vaccines, which is that there are more questions than there are answers. How soon will we know if the vaccines are actually working and are limiting the spread? And will they prevent transmission as well as infection? At what point will economies start reopening? And what does the new normal look like? Will people require a vaccine passport? That's something that's been talked about quite often in order for people to travel or return to work. How do we monitor and even react in the case of side effects? If a vaccine is causing side effects, will it be pulled from the market? Will there be a delay? All of those things and all of these questions are questions that need to be answered as we're understanding the impact that the vaccine will have. But I think we have every reason to be positive. The recent news from the vaccine trial suggests up to 95% efficacy for the Pfizer-BioNTech and the Moderna vaccines. The AstraZeneca vaccine just showed 70% effectiveness. And if you think about that, that compares to the flu vaccine, which is normally effective at 40 to 50%. So we're seeing much higher efficacy with the COVID-19 vaccines. But it's not just about the vaccines, it's also about the treatments. There's more treatments in use right now, there's treatments in development, and while we're seeing this giant spike in cases, we're also seeing a reduction in the mortality rate. And that is because we have new treatments and we're learning more and more about this virus every day. And that's what gives us hope. If you want to learn more about what I've just said, we have a white paper. You can go to our website and you can download it, or you can reach out to me. Thank you very much.
Thanks so much, Jackie. That was very interesting, and the acceleration, how fast this was developed is really impressive. I think new technology has to be thanked for that, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, these vaccines would not have gotten to market as quickly if they were using the same mechanism of action as the traditional vaccines. So that's really expedited. And I think the key point about technology is what it will do for healthcare in the future. So I don't know that we'll be waiting as long for approval of drugs as we have in the past. And that's great for humanity, great for healthcare.
Yeah, it's a great story to end the year, and to say thank you to everyone for being with us. Thank you to all our speakers. I hope everyone will have a safe end of the year, a safe start, and we look forward to seeing you again in January 2021. Thank you again, and bye-bye, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.